Were there this many stairs here last time? The staircase seems unnecessarily long.
Twilight chuckled nervously to herself as she crept up the long spiral stairs to the elements chamber of the castle of the two sisters. No matter how much giggling she had done, the feeling of being watched wouldn't abate, and her knees grew increasingly shaky. Her horn's glow banished the shadows, but only as far as the eternally receding curves of the crumbling stone wall to her left. The stairs climbed into the dark invasion of Tartarus as the cool air of the evening gave way to the outright cold of the autumn night. The only sounds were Twilight's own breathing and the soft clap of her hooves against one stone. The stairs kept going. Twilight's legs were beginning to protest. Had the stairs been this long before? When she had ran up them to find the elements of harmony all those years ago? Had it only been 4 years? It felt like forever ago. Was she on the right staircase? This couldn't be right. There should have been a landing by now. Twilight slowed and sucked in a deep breath of the chilly air. It made her chest burn, and it took her mind off her legs for a moment.
This is wrong. This can't be right. Did I walk into a trap of some sort that keeps you walking in place forever? What if I can't get out of it? How long would it take for the others to notice I'm gone and then find me?
Twilight felt her breathing quicken, in lockstep with her heart rate. She just slowed to a complete stop when the sudden landing she had been seeking rounded the corner and teased her with a place to rest her hooves. She let out a sudden laugh, the tension gone for a moment as she spied her destination, and she galloped the remaining steps and led to the very top, feeling with the sudden joy of a foal in a field of rain puddles.
Aha!
Twilight laughed again and dropped into the seated position to catch her breath. The large chamber beyond the landing stretched its way into the darkness, swallowed by the night. Twilight knew large bay windows lined the chamber, and part of the roof was collapsed and open to the outside, but she saw no stars or the moon. She did feel much more of a breeze here, and leaves, dry and spread out on the wide floor of the chamber, rustled faintly.
There were 8 support pillars. The third pillar on the right is collapsed, broken into several pieces.
She recited quietly, as the memories of the fateful day out of her mind.
There's a dais at the opposite end of the room, raised 1 step. It takes a full 3 seconds and a full gallop to cover the distance from here to dais. Call it 30 yards? Which is structurally consistent with the ballroom on the ground floor.
Her voice sounded flat, absorbed by the absolute darkness of the night, as gently as the fluid glow from her horn was.
There is a stand on the dais that rests in a sunken base. It should still be surrounded by the rubble of false elements of harmony that Nightmare...
Twilight swallowed dryly.
Nightmare Moon destroyed.
Twilight picked herself up and pushed more power into her horn to form a glowing orb of light that she could direct independently. Then she created 3 more and sent them all 4 out into the room to spread the illumination as much as she could. She stood at the door and watched the tiny lights float along with giant fireflies. They drifted past the broken windows and fallen ceiling, their pinpoints of light picking out and casting deeper shadows as they went. It was filled with more leaves that shivered under the touch of the cold autumn breeze, but the room was as if she left it all those years ago. There was even a hint of a dark stain on the stone tile where the manifest power of the elements had struck Nightmare Moon down. Twilight stayed well away from that spot as she revealed the moment of her greatest triumph. She could remember the voices of her friends, the overwhelming presence of a mad goddess and her own madness as she started to change, that same goddess armed with nothing but her horn and wild guess at the villainous. It paid off in the long run. As a single fell swoop, Princess Luna was returned to the world, and Twilight and her friends were named heroes. Changelings, and the chaos spirits, and the power-mad creatures was nothing all after that. She sighed, and hung her head for a moment before turning around.
I guess it was nothing. I've spent the better part of the night just scaring myself. I need to go get that tapestry I left downstairs and get home before the girls come searching.
Twilight snuffed her whistling lights one by one as she headed back towards the entrance, her hoofsteps echoing against the floor. She paused as she released the last light and was once again plunged into total darkness. Leaves rustled as the breeze picked up, and the hair on the back of her neck and spine rose to stand on end. Twilight shivered as the cold air of the autumn wind blew around her. Her hoofsteps were still echoing through the chamber. The wind turned frigid as the swirled dust devils of the dead blue leaves all around her. When it died down again for a moment, her breath misted into a little puff of condensation. Her heart thudded in her chest, and her blood pulsed loudly in her ears as she turned and looked back in the empty room. Her horn lit barely illuminated further than her hooves could reach. The night loomed over her like the silent and impersonating weight, hungry for all the light that it could see and sound she could feel it.
Hello? Is some pony there?
The rustle and crunch of a dead leaf was her only answer. Rarity was just going to have to wait on that musty old tapestry. She fired up her horn and ran the calculations for a mass and distance in the rotation speed of the planet. It wasn't as precise as she liked, but at the end point for her teleportation spell was within an acutable walking distance from her castle in Ponyville. She opened the rift in reality and let herself be passed through. It took a moment for the world to right itself, but in that moment, just as she passed through the logical and reasonable plane of existence to return within the Acorn energies, Twilight saw a black blot in the vague shape of a pony there in the room with her. She saw it as soon as she crushed into the dumpsters behind Sugar Cube Corner. She knew it, and it had seen her in return.
Support me on Patreon and Ko-fi. Links in the description. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe. Good night, every pony.